The trash can. In Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason is resurrected and ends up boarding a ship with students heading to New York. What should have been a celebratory trip turns into a massacre at sea, which continues when the killer finally reaches the city streets. Charles, the strict and controlling teacher, tries to escape, but Jason relentlessly chases him down until cornering him in a narrow alley. With brutality, Jason lifts him up and throws him inside a trash can full of toxic waste and then does something disgusting and cruel. Skull crushing. Back in Friday the 13th Part 6, we have Tommy Jarvis, still haunted by the events of the past, trying to make sure Jason never comes back to life again. But his attempt to destroy the body goes wrong. Lightning strikes the coffin and brings Jason back as an immortal zombie, stronger than ever. Now in Forest Green, he starts a new wave of brutal murders. The sheriff and his team try to stop him, but quickly realize that regular weapons have no effect at all. Officer Pappas unloads his revolver on Jason without causing any damage. In a quick and merciless move, Jason grabs the cop's head with his hands and starts squeezing with superhuman strength. Pappas is killed, and his body drops lifeless right there. But when it seems like Jason has already reached the peak of his brutality, one of the most grotesque deaths in the entire franchise shows up: the girlfriend. In Jason Goes to Hell, after finally being ambushed and blown to pieces by the FBI, he seems defeated, but his supernatural essence lives on, possessing bodies to continue his killing spree. Still, the brutal style of his murders remains the same, and one of the most shocking happens in a simple camping tent. Deborah and her boyfriend are about to have an intimate moment when the darkness of the forest reveals their worst nightmare: Jason. He then pulls the pole upward, literally splitting the girl in half inside the tent, leaving her boyfriend in shock at the grotesque scene. Twisted head. Also in Friday the 13th Part 6, we get the bizarre death of Sissy. The Crystal Lake camp, renamed Forest Green, once again becomes the stage for a bloodbath. The young camp counselor is in her room when she hears a noise, but before she can react, Jason storms in and grabs her brutally. He twists Sissy's head at an impossible angle, snapping her neck with a sharp crack. Her body falls lifeless as Jason continues his hunt across the camp. Trapped. In the Friday the 13th reboot, Jason Voorhees returns even more brutal, intelligent, and relentless. The group of young campers at Crystal Lake becomes easy prey for a killer who doesn't hesitate to make every death cruel and painful. Amanda is captured, and instead of a quick death, Jason chooses something much more sadistic. He stuffs her into a sleeping bag, completely immobilized, and hangs her over a campfire. With no chance to escape, Amanda is burned alive. The fire slowly consumes the sleeping bag, turning her agony into a terrifying spectacle. This scene was definitely a reference to one of the most remembered deaths of the franchise, one we'll show a bit later. While some suffer a slow and painful death, others don't even have time to fight for their lives. The dance floor. Another sinister death happens in Friday the 13th Part 8. Eva Watanabe's. Jason had boarded the graduation cruise to New York, causing a massacre on board. While trying to get away from the chaos, Eva finds herself alone in the empty room, not realizing Jason is already lurking. With no chance to escape, Eva gets cornered, and within seconds, Jason grabs her by the neck. He squeezes her neck until her body collapses lifeless on the dance floor. Look behind you. Also in the reboot, Jason Voorhees is mercilessly hunting anyone who tries to escape his territory. Among the survivors is Trent, one of the movie's most arrogant characters. Selfish and cowardly, he desperately tries to run away alone, but his fate is already sealed. Jason shows up behind him, uses his machete, and finally impales him on a truck. Yeah, man, I'd be running for my life too. The Cleaver. In Friday the 13th, the final chapter, Jason Voorhees escapes the morgue and returns to Crystal Lake, where he terrorizes a new group of teens and the Jarvis family, who would end up playing a crucial role in his fate. It's in this setting that one of the most memorable deaths of the film happens. Jimmy, played by Crispin Glover, is distracted when Jason surprises him from behind. Without giving him time to react, Jason finishes him off with a cleaver to the face, instantly dropping Jimmy. The Sauna rock. In Friday the 13th Part 8, we get another bloody death. Jason is still aboard the ship full of students heading to New York, and among the passengers is a young boxer who, after a fight, decides to relax in the ship's sauna. While he tries to rest, Jason silently enters the sauna. Instead of using his favorite weapon, he improvises with something nearby. Cold-blooded, Jason grabs the overheated rock and takes the guy by surprise. The victim had no time to react and died almost instantly. And if Jason has already shown creativity improvising weapons, the next scene shows how he gained the symbol that would mark his image forever: the hockey mask. Poor Shelley. In Friday the 13th Part 3, Jason continues his terror spree, this time in Higgins Haven. Among the group of teens is Shelley, the comic relief of the story. Always pulling pranks, he tries to fit in with his bad jokes, but his last prank goes terribly wrong. Yeah, looks like this time it wasn't a prank, and he came face to face with Jason, which led to his end. After killing him, Jason takes Shelley's hockey mask, an accessory that would become the villain's ultimate symbol, and turn him into a horror icon. Crazy Ralph. In Friday the 13th Part 2, Jason Voorhees is starting his own wave of terror. Among the returning characters is Crazy Ralph, the eccentric doom prophet who had already warned about the lake's curse in the first movie. This time, his habit of spying on and warning the teens becomes his death sentence. Out of nowhere, Jason appears behind him. Using barbed wire, the killer wraps it around the old man's neck and only stops when he no longer resists. Trailer ride. In Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason continues his brutal killing spree around Forest Green, eliminating anyone who crosses his path. Inside the trailer, young Nikki is walking around calmly when she suddenly gets grabbed. Unfortunately, Court has no idea what's happening since he's blasting music on his headphones. With no way out, Jason slams Nikki's face against the metal bathroom wall. The scene is quick but impactful. Sheriff Garris. Still in Friday the 13th Part 6, we get one of the characters who tries to face Jason head-on. Sheriff Garris, determined to protect the town at any cost. When Jason finally invades the camp, Garris jumps into action, trying to fight the killer directly. The fight is short but intense. In one of the movie's most shocking moments, Jason easily overpowers him. He grabs Garris and bends him backward with such force that the sheriff literally breaks in half. Just the sound of it makes you cringe. Paintball. In that same movie, we have a group of executives taking part in a paintball game out in the woods. Everything seemed fine until the fun was suddenly interrupted by an unexpected encounter with Jason Voorhees. In one of the franchise's most memorable moments, Jason grabs one of the players and smashes his head against a tree trunk. The impact is so strong that the blood leaves a bizarre mark in the shape of a smiley face on the trunk. Popped eye. In Friday the 13th Part 3, we also have the bizarre death of Rick, Chris's boyfriend. When he comes face to face with Jason, there's no chance to react. The killer grabs him by the head with both hands and, in one of the saga's most brutal moments, starts slowly crushing his skull. The pressure is so intense that one of Rick's eyes literally pops out of his face, creating one of the franchise's most iconic scenes, the uppercut. Again in Friday the 13th Part 8, we have Julius, a young boxer who decides to face the killer head-on. He gathers every ounce of courage and goes for it, throwing dozens of punches at Jason's body and face. But nothing happens. Jason doesn't move back, doesn't feel pain, he just stands there in silence. Exhausted, Julius throws one last punch and with no strength left, dares Jason to give it his best shot. That's when the final blow lands. With a single devastating uppercut, Jason knocks Julius's head clean off in one strike. Upside down kill. Besides all the gruesome deaths we've seen, there's this one in Friday the 13th Part 3, where Andy is just walking around on his hands inside the cabin, basically doing a handstand instead of walking normally, and he's doing it all carefree. But the fun doesn't last long. Jason suddenly shows up and with no time to react, swings his machete. Andy is literally cut in half while still upside down. This scene became memorable for the contrast, a goofy moment that instantly turns into one of the bloodiest deaths of the film. It was actually so graphic that it got cut from the original release for being too much. Goodbye, Alice. Back in Friday the 13th Part 2, Jason makes sure to start his killing spree by eliminating someone very special, Alice, the lone survivor of the original Crystal Lake Massacre. She was trying to move on with her life, but the trauma was still alive in her mind. And unfortunately, Jason was right behind her. Out of nowhere, Jason breaks into her home, and the silence of the night is shattered by a sudden, cruel attack. He grabs Alice and drives an ice pick straight into her head. With that, Jason wipes out the only survivor from the first massacre. Speared in bed. In the same movie, Jason shows once again how he can turn moments of vulnerability into pure horror. A couple is in bed, caught up in a moment of intimacy. What they don't know is that Jason is already there, hiding underneath, waiting for the right moment to strike. Suddenly, he drives a massive spear upward, piercing through the mattress and impaling both victims at once. The folding bed. In Freddy vs. Jason, two horror icons finally face off, and of course bizarre deaths had to be part of it. Freddy Krueger brings Jason back from the dead to spread fear in Springwood, but the plan quickly gets out of control when Jason starts killing non-stop, making it clear he wouldn't be easy to manipulate. Even before the showdown begins, Jason proves he's still unbeatable in the art of creative killing. This time, the victim is Trey, a young guy who doesn't even have time to react. Jason suddenly appears and stabs him repeatedly, turning the room into a bloodbath. But Jason doesn't stop there. He grabs the bed Trey is still on and, with supernatural strength, folds it in half. A quick death, but so brutal that whenever I think about this movie, this is the very first scene that comes to mind. The sleeping bag In Friday the 13th Part 7, Jason faces something new for the first time in the franchise. A young girl with telekinetic powers, Tina Shepard. But before that supernatural showdown, he makes it clear his brutality hasn't changed at all. One of the most famous and brutal deaths of the saga happens when Jason drags a camper out of her tent. She's still trapped inside her sleeping bag, completely defenseless. Jason doesn't need fancy weapons or elaborate plans. He lifts the heavy bag with insane strength, and, well, you know what happens next. One single swing is all it takes to end her life. To this day, this death is remembered as one of the franchise's fan favorites, and it was even recreated in Friday the 13th, the game. The machete. In Friday the 13th Part 2, one of the most brutal and most remembered deaths is Mark's, a young man in a wheelchair. He thought he was safe, just enjoying a quiet moment. But with Jason, peace never lasts long. Out of nowhere, Jason appears behind him and drives his machete straight into Mark's face. As shocking as that already is, what happens next is even more disturbing. The impact sends Mark, still in his wheelchair, tumbling down a long flight of stairs. The camera follows his body as it bounces step by step, backward, while the chair rattles out of control. Liquid nitrogen. In Jason X, the franchise takes us somewhere completely different, outer space. Jason's body, kept in cryogenic stasis, ends up aboard a futuristic spaceship, but the second he's thawed out, the killing starts again. One of the victims is Adrienne, a student trying to examine Jason's body in a high-tech lab. She thinks she's safe, surrounded by advanced equipment, but Jason doesn't need anything other than raw brutality. Without a word, he grabs her and plunges her face into a tank of liquid nitrogen. The result is instant and shocking. Adrienne's face freezes solid in seconds. But Jason doesn't stop there. He pulls her frozen head out of the tank and smashes it against the counter. This death is still remembered today as one of the most brutal in the entire franchise. From Crystal Lake all the way to outer space, Jason proved there's no such thing as a safe place. Now I want to know, which of these do you think is the most brutal kill in the Friday the 13th franchise? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. See you soon.